In the world of military strategy, there are moments when politics, technology, and national security collide in unexpected ways. One such moment unfolded in the late 1960s, when a country faced a serious challenge. After paying for advanced naval vessels, it was suddenly denied delivery due to a political decision. This is the case of Israel, which found itself in a critical situation after France imposed an arms embargo. The situation raised important questions. What happens when military contracts are blocked after full payment? How do nations respond when defense plans are disrupted overnight? And how can strategy overcome political barriers without direct confrontation? At that time, naval power in the Mediterranean was becoming increasingly important. Missile boats, fast, agile, and heavily armed, were changing the nature of naval operations. Israel had invested heavily in acquiring such vessels to strengthen its naval capabilities. But just as these ships were nearly ready, a sudden shift in French policy changed everything. Instead of focusing on drama, this video will break down the real facts, legal situation, and strategic decisions behind how Israel ultimately secured its missile boats. We will examine the geopolitical environment, contractual challenges, and the calculated approach used to resolve the issue. This is not a fictional scenario, it is a real example of how nations respond under pressure and how planning and strategy can reshape outcomes. Let's begin by understanding why these missile boats were so important in the first place. To understand how Israel recovered its missile boats despite a French ban, it is essential to first examine the broader geopolitical and military context of the 1960s. During this period, naval warfare was undergoing a transformation. Traditional large warships were increasingly complemented, and in some cases challenged, by smaller, faster vessels equipped with guided missiles. These missile boats offered speed, maneuverability, and significant firepower, making them highly effective in coastal defense and regional conflicts. Israel, surrounded by hostile neighbors and facing security challenges on multiple fronts, recognized the importance of modernizing its navy. The Israeli Navy, which had previously been relatively small and less advanced compared to other branches of the military, began focusing on acquiring fast attack craft capable of launching anti-ship missiles. This shift was influenced by evolving naval doctrines and the need to counter larger enemy fleets more efficiently. France, at the time, was one of Israel's primary defense partners. The relationship between the two countries was strong, particularly in the late 1950s and early 1960s. France supplied Israel with various military technologies, including aircraft and naval equipment. As part of this cooperation, Israel entered into a contract with French shipbuilders to construct a series of advanced missile boats. These vessels were based on designs that would later become highly influential in naval warfare. The boats were being built in the French port city of Cherbourg. By the late 1960s, several of these vessels were either completed or nearing completion. Israel had already paid for them, and they were expected to play a crucial role in strengthening the country's naval capabilities. However, the geopolitical situation changed dramatically after the 1967 Arab-Israeli War, also known as the Six-Day War. Following this conflict, France reassessed its foreign policy in the Middle East. Seeking to improve relations with Arab nations, the French government decided to impose an arms embargo on Israel. This embargo included the suspension of military deliveries, even those that had already been paid for. As a result, the missile boats in Cherbourg were effectively blocked from being transferred to Israel. This created a complex legal and diplomatic situation. On one hand, Israel had fulfilled its contractual obligations by paying for the vessels. On the other hand, France, as a sovereign nation, exercised its authority to halt arms exports based on its foreign policy decisions. This situation highlights a key concept in international relations, the intersection of legal agreements and political decisions. While contracts may be legally binding, they can still be affected by changes in national policy. For Israel, this posed a significant challenge. The country needed these vessels for its defense, yet it had to navigate the constraints imposed by the embargo. Understanding this background is crucial because it sets the stage for the strategic and legal approaches that would later be used to resolve the issue. Rather than being a simple case of evasion or confrontation, the situation required careful planning, adherence to legal frameworks, and innovative thinking. After France imposed the arms embargo, the situation surrounding the missile boats became a complex issue involving international law, diplomacy, and strategic planning. Israel had already paid for the vessels, which meant that the dispute was not about ownership, but about delivery and export authorization. From a legal perspective, the contracts between Israel and the French shipbuilders were still valid. However, export of military equipment required approval from the French government. With the embargo in place, this approval was no longer granted. This created a legal gray area. The ships technically belonged to Israel, but they could not leave French territory without official permission. To address this challenge, Israel explored various options within the framework of international law. One approach involved examining the possibility of transferring ownership through third parties or civilian channels. In some cases, military equipment can be reclassified or transferred under different legal arrangements, although such processes must still comply with national and international regulations. Another important aspect of the situation was timing. By the late 1960s, most of the missile boats were already completed or close to completion. Keeping them idle in the shipyard was not beneficial for any party involved. For France, it created logistical and financial concerns. For Israel, it delayed critical defense upgrades. Diplomatically, the situation required careful handling. Direct confrontation could have escalated tensions further, potentially affecting other areas of cooperation. Instead, efforts were made to manage the issue in a way that minimized conflict while still protecting national interests. The resolution of the issue eventually involved a combination of legal interpretation, administrative decisions, and strategic planning. The vessels were ultimately transferred under circumstances that complied with existing regulations, though the exact details have been widely discussed and analyzed by historians. This case is often studied as an example of how nations can navigate complex international restrictions without resorting to direct conflict. It demonstrates the importance of understanding legal frameworks, maintaining flexibility in strategy, and using diplomacy effectively. It is also worth noting that this event had a lasting impact on Israel's defense policy. Following the embargo, Israel placed greater emphasis on developing its own defense industry. By reducing reliance on foreign suppliers, the country aimed to avoid similar situations in the future. This shift contributed to the growth of domestic capabilities in areas such as shipbuilding, missile technology, and electronics. In summary, the recovery of the missile boats was not the result of a single action, but rather a series of coordinated efforts across legal, diplomatic, and strategic domains. It highlights how complex international challenges can be addressed through a combination of planning, negotiation, and adaptability. The successful recovery of the missile boats had significant implications for military strategy, national policy, and international relations. Beyond the immediate outcome, this event provided valuable lessons that continue to influence defense planning and procurement strategies around the world. One of the most important lessons is the risk associated with dependence on foreign suppliers for critical defense equipment. While international partnerships can provide access to advanced technology, they also introduce vulnerabilities. Political changes, such as shifts in foreign policy or diplomatic priorities, can disrupt supply chains and delay or prevent delivery of essential assets. In this case, the embargo demonstrated how quickly such dependencies can become strategic liabilities. As a result, Israel accelerated efforts to build a self-reliant defense industry. Over time, this led to the development of indigenous technologies and manufacturing capabilities. Today, Israel is recognized as a major producer of advanced defense systems, including naval platforms, missiles, and electronic warfare equipment. This transformation can be traced, in part, to the lessons learned during the missile boat crisis. Another key takeaway is the importance of flexibility in strategic planning. Rather than relying on a single course of action, successful strategies often involve multiple options and contingency plans. In this situation, Israel explored legal, diplomatic, and administrative avenues simultaneously. This multi-layered approach increased the likelihood of achieving a favorable outcome without escalating tensions. The event also underscores the role of international law in shaping military outcomes. While laws and regulations can impose constraints, they can also provide pathways for resolution. By understanding and working within these frameworks, nations can address challenges in a manner that is both effective and compliant with global norms. In addition, the case highlights the significance of timing and operational readiness. The missile boats were urgently needed to enhance naval capabilities, particularly in a region where maritime threats were evolving. Delays in their delivery could have had serious implications for national security. By resolving the situation in a timely manner, Israel was able to integrate these vessels into its navy and strengthen its defensive posture. From a broader perspective, this event illustrates how technological innovation can influence strategic decisions. The adoption of missile boats represented a shift toward more agile and cost-effective naval forces. This approach has since been adopted by many countries, particularly those operating in coastal or regional environments. Finally, the incident serves as a case study in crisis management. It demonstrates how complex problems can be addressed through a combination of analysis, planning, and execution. Rather than relying on a single solution, effective crisis management often involves coordinating efforts across multiple domains. In conclusion, the recovery of the missile boats was not just a tactical success, but a strategic turning point. It reshaped defense policies, influenced industrial development, and provided lessons that remain relevant today. By studying this event, we gain a deeper understanding of how nations navigate challenges and adapt to changing circumstances in the pursuit of security and stability.